My friends, people, we are here with, this is me, Guy Meyer, California Times, and my guest this afternoon, evening, or morning, whenever you're watching this, is Jack Wilkinson, who was the former chair of the Marin GOP. And Jack, what is your, do you have a title at this moment?
Retired.
Retired?
Happily retired.
Okay, okay. You had a long period of time, you were just telling me, starting from when you were a young Republican.
Well,
right?
I started this guy in 1968 when I joined the San Francisco Young Republicans, and I have been off and on involved in politics locally and nationally, and campaigning for people and phone calls and knocking on doors and doing all the things that one does in campaigning to get somebody elected. So there's a degree of familiarity. I rejoined the Marin Republican Central Committee in about 2002 or 4, somewhere in there, and got quite involved. And here it is 20 years later. And the process, I think it's important to understand. We have the California GOP, and the GOP is the Republican Party, and that the whole purpose of the Republican Party and the state party and the local organizations is to recruit and register Republicans and to find candidates to run for office and to help candidates that are running for office as Republicans to get elected. And whatever it takes to do that, knocking on doors, sending out flyers, mailers, supporting candidates, walking precincts, having meetings and getting people introduced, all of this to raise the awareness of somebody running for office. Very few people really pay attention to who's running for office until something big catches their attention. Most people are busy living their lives, as well they should be. I mean, a politician makes a lot of noise. Some of it you want to hear, some of it you don't want to hear, some of it you never do hear because they don't interest you. And that's kind of the way this whole country was set up. It was set up to be a republic. A lot of people say a democracy, but we're not a democracy, we're a republic. The difference being, in a democracy, everybody votes on everything, and that's just too cumbersome. What we do is we vote for people that represent our interests. And when the government was set up, I don't know how much you know about the history of this, but we were 13 colonies that fought the British, and we won our independence. And then we realized that this 13 colonies didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have any common organization. So there was a constitutional convention held in 1787 in Philadelphia from May to September, where all these delegates sat down and they hammered out a constitution. And in the Constitution, they created a 3-branch government: executive, judicial, and legislative. The legislative was the Congress. It was composed of 2 houses. And the one house was the House of Representatives, which are the closest to the people. And right now, one representative represents about 435 people. Actually, it's a bit more. It was set up at 435. It's a bit more. And there are 2 senators.
Say that again. Represents 435
people.
People? One representative?
That's about right, but it's actually a much larger number now.
Oh.
That's how it was set up.
Oh, how it was set up back then?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
So, but there's far too many people now.
Right. I was going to say 435,000 people, or...
Well, now it's closer to, it's not 435,000, but it's closer to that.
Yeah.
The number is not what's important. What's important is that we have a number of representatives.
Right.
And then we have the Senate. And the Senate was created to be a little bit higher level. And the way the Senate was originally set up was to have 2 senators, and they were to be selected by the House of Representatives. And that worked off and on kind of well and kind of bad, and didn't work until the 17th Amendment was passed in 1921, that the senators are directly elected by the public.
Wait a minute. I didn't know that. You're saying that up until 1921, senators were elected by the representatives?
By the House of Representatives for their state. Right.
Oh, by the.
By each state. The state of California would elect their senators.
Oh.
Just the senators for the state. Every state would elect their own senators.
The state would. So the voters of the state.
No, the voters of the state would vote for the representatives. The representatives would then select the senators.
Well, you're
So
describing
now,
something new
but
to
the
my
way it
mind.
is now, we have two senators that are
Right.
directly elected by the public,
Right.
and the House of Representatives, and they're directly elected by the public. And the whole idea of representatives is all politics are local. All politics are local. And the best decisions are made on a local level. And that's the whole point behind this. To me, the best description of this whole country is in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. Simply stated, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To ensure these rights, governments are elected by the people. And so the people elect the representatives to represent their best interests, which is why you have two congressmen from the same state, as we got a number here, but they'll be different parties because there's Republicans in one place and more Democrats in another. California, unfortunately, for the past 50 years has been primarily Democratic. And the Democrats have controlled the state legislature for most of the past 50 years. Either they have the representatives or the governor. And it's not worked out so well. I don't know if you've noticed that the state has a tremendous debt problem.
Yeah.
Just like the country, we have a tremendous debt problem. But getting back to the California GOP, is broken into every county has a central committee. We've got 58 counties. Now, we don't have 58 central committees because some of the counties, especially up north, are too small to have their own. We've, I think, got 58 counties, and there's 52 central committees. And the president of the central committee is to operate on a local level. And Marin County Republican Central Committee represents all the people in Marin. To be a member of the county, you must live in the county of Marin. Now, how do you get to be on the county? Well, you go to meetings and somebody will say, well, hey, would you like to join us? And you say, yeah, I would. If there are open seats in the county, and right now there are, I believe, 22 spots in Marin, and there are 5 districts. And I forget the numbers for each district. District 1 is Central Marin. We use San Rafael in this area around here. And San Rafael, which is the largest city, Nevada's broken into 2 parts, and part of that is West Marin.
Was that 22 voting members? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
On the
Central committees.
Okay.
It could be 24. I forget now. The numbers just changed a little bit. But the significance is you're elected to that. Now, if there are 5 seats in District 1, and if only 4 are filled, that somebody could come in and say, well, I'd like to join the committee, and we could say, well, fine. We will, elect you to, we'll have you come to a meeting, and you can make a presentation to the committee as a whole, and then you can be nominated by somebody from District 1 and elected by the rest of the committee to fill that vacant spot. If there are no vacant spots, which is what we're hoping to achieve, and I think we may have gotten close this last election, all the representatives to the central committees are elected by the public in their district. And they're elected, we have the election every 4 years on the presidential primaries. Now, the central committees couldn't afford, even the state party couldn't afford to have these different elections throughout the state. So we don't create a ballot, we become on the ballot at presidential primaries, which are held every 4 years. And each party can have a spot on the ballot. Right now there are 2 main parties, and there have been throughout the last 200 years.
Let me go back to the on the ballot. Are you the
presidential
county delegates will also that election will be on a primary ballot as well?
The primary ballot. You will get the presidential primary.
Right.
And the whole point of the primary is that it's a party-only primary. You know, if you're a Democrat,
Right.
you vote for your Democrat. If you're a
Right.
Republican, you vote for the Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the central committees are on that ballot,
Oh.
because everybody gets that ballot.
Uh,
And the only people that are going to vote for Republican Central Committee members are Republicans.
Mhm.
And the only ones that will vote for Democrats are Democrats.
Right.
So we're on that ballot.
Yeah.
You're elected on that ballot. And then from that election, you are now available. And the Central Committees have what is called an organizational meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most of the Central Committees have these every 2 years.
Mm.
But every 4 years, there's an organizational meeting when the new members that are elected in the primary are installed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, up until last year, our primaries were in November, and the installation is in January.
Hmm.
But Gavin Newsom, wanting to make a bigger statement from California, got the California primary moved back to March.
You
So-
said the primary was in November.
Up
You didn't-
until last year, this last presidential primary.
Oh.
The presidential primary had been in November. Last year, in 2024, it was in March.
Huh.
The primary was moved to March.
I,
And
thought
that
the,
was the-
I never thought the primary was in November. I thought that was always the main election, but they had the primary too?
No, the primary was, oh, the primary could have been in August. The point is that it was moved back to March.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
So a bunch of people were elected in March, and according to the bylaws of the central committees, you will then be installed at the organizational meeting. And the organizational meeting serves two purposes. The new members that were elected at the primary election are installed.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an election held, and the chair of the central committee, which was me, every November would appoint a nominating committee. And that nominating committee was to find people to run for the office.
Mm.
And there are 4 elective offices: chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary.
Mm.
Those are the executive committee, and then a member at large. So the point of the nominating committee is to find people to fill those spots. And they can be nominated from the floor, but it's at the organizational meeting that this whole process takes place. So the chair of the central committee that exists at the organizational meeting has been a chair for the last 2 years. Now, I say the primary is every 4 years, but every 2 years there is a new organizational meeting, so that no one person is burdened for a 4-year period to serve in any particular office. They can, if they wish, and I did, and a couple of others served that 4-year term.
It could be
But you can also
quite a
say,
responsibility
Yeah.
sometimes for
and
4 years.
somebody can say, well, I want to run, and yeah, okay, you run. And there's an election for the executive committee at an organizational meeting every 2 years. But every 4 years is when the people that were elected in the primary are installed. The meeting is chaired by the chair of the central committee, which in this last instance was me. So you set up the meeting, people come in, you have a meeting, a regular meeting, and then you open it up for the installation, and the new people are sworn in and installed. You're now officially a member. Based on the fact that you won an election, you now become a member. And at that point, those new members can say, I want to run for office. You don't have to be nominated. You can nominate yourself from the floor. In this case, there were 4 people that were nominated by the nominating committee. I don't quite know how it happened because things kind of went awry, significantly awry, at the last meeting. Now, as I mentioned, the chair's responsibility is to run this meeting. Unfortunately, some new people that got elected in March thought they should be on the Central Committee immediately after that election, ignoring the bylaws of the Central Committee. And that was quite a battle. That went on for quite some time. And finally, I thought settled down, but the new supposed chair of the committee went and rented the room that I was going to rent, so I couldn't rent it, and set up the meeting as if he were the chair and was running the meeting. Now, the whole point of the organizational meeting is to have a regular meeting.
And you were still, as far as you knew, you were still officially the chair.
Not as far as I know, as far
mean,
as the bylaws stated,
okay.
I was chair. I would be chair until the new organizational meeting and a new chair was elected. That's just the way the process has been going that way for the past 20 some odd years I've been involved, and for many, many years before that. The organizational meeting, every 2 years it's turned over. You got new people sitting in. Some people decided that they apparently wanted to upset this thing, and they took over the meeting. And I let that go. Look, my whole point of this was to go to the meeting, and the entire executive committee had resigned. The vice chair, the treasurer, and the secretary had resigned.
Before the meeting took place?
Before the meeting.
Yeah.
There was a lot of contention. I don't know how aware you are of this, but the Central Committee, myself, and Kernan Jang, who was a previous chair, were sued in small claims court by 4 people that had been members of the committee: Frank Drulard, Ron Elijah, Bill McLaughlin, and John Turnacliffe. All had been removed from the committee. Turnacliffe was removed from the committee because he moved out of Marin. And you can't be a member of the Central Committee if you don't live in Marin. He moved out, therefore he lost his seat. The McLaughlin and Drulard were removed by a vote of the whole committee from the committee for violation of Article 4 of the bylaws for constantly interrupting and creating havoc at meetings. They were voted out of the committee. Ron Elijah was never part of the committee. He was, and that, I forget, he was a substitute, and he was removed from the committee. These people then sued us in small claims court.
Let me just interject, because I've heard a few things from my conversation with John regarding his residence. He's indicated that he felt that he was still a resident here, that it was sort of a technicality. I'll just put that out there on behalf of him. And the interrupting part of the others who were violating the bylaws, is it basically because of a major conflict simply of the political perspectives? Was it part of the new Trump versus older establishment Republicans? Have anything to do with it?
As far as I'm concerned, it was just that these guys would constantly interrupt the meetings. They were constantly making noise.
To what purpose? What was their...
I have no idea what the purpose is. You'd have to ask them.
All right. Well, anyways...
All I know is that a whole lot of people were upset with their actions.
Yeah.
And people said, well, we got to get rid of these people. They don't belong at the meetings. And we finally did. We had to vote them out. I've never done that in all the years that I've been doing this. Well, no, it happened once in 1969. But this is a very unusual process. John moved out of the state. We got a notice from the Secretary of State that he lived in a different county. Well, you can't be the member. The Secretary of State said that he moved out. You can't be a member of the Central Committee if you're not in the county. And the information came from the Secretary of State, which frankly was a little unfortunate. John had moved because he was selling his property in Marin, and he wasn't going to be gone for maybe a few months. But other people on the committee said he moved out of the committee. He's not part of Marin.
Obviously, I mean, there was some kind of dividing line, wasn't there, in terms of us versus them versus us.
Yeah,
it was
they created a dividing line. You don't sue your fellow members, especially. It was the stupidest suit in the world, and I still don't understand why they did this. But they sued, saying that we signed a lease committing the Central Committee to a lease payment The fact of the matter is, I did sign the lease. My name was on the lease because committees can't lease things. Because a committee, who's responsible on a committee? Nobody. So my name was on that lease. If the committee failed to pay the lease, they come after me. Everybody on the committee was fine with the lease. Nobody complained about it until these guys, 2 years into the lease, for some reason complained about it, took us to small claims court, and said I owed the committee the year's lease payment. And the judge asked, well, where does it go? I said, well, the committee gets the money. Well, the committee got the benefit of the bargain. The other thing is that they had no standing. They were not members of the committee. You can't sue people if you're not a member of the committee. It's like, if that were so, then I could go sue IBM for something that I think they shouldn't have done, but I don't own any IBM stock. I have to be harmed by someone.
Jack,
at any rate,
we're going to have to pull this together in
okay,
terms
well,
of...
so what happened is we're now having an organizational meeting. I go into the meeting, and at 7 o'clock I stand up, we say a pledge, I make my normal speech that I make every meeting for the last 4 years, that we are a private organization, and the public is allowed to attend. You can't participate except if you raise your hand and you're recognized by the chair, whether you're a member or not. You must raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. And then if the chair allows it, you can speak. So that's what I said. And I also said, because California law states that no recordings of private meetings can be made unless all the people at the meeting agree to it. So we've been saying for the past 4 years.
Now, wait a minute. There is a law that says...
There is a California law that says at a private meeting.
Of political
of
meeting?
Anything, a private meeting. A private meeting. No recordings can be made unless everybody that's going to be recorded agrees. So to avoid going through all the agreement, we simply say there'll be no recordings. Some people are just upset about that. Bill McLaughlin being one of those. Turnicliffe, I'm not sure how he feels about it. He didn't make too much noise this last time. But what happened at this meeting is I call the meeting to order, say no recordings, audio or video. And immediately there's noise coming from the crowd. McLaughlin stands up and yells, point of order.
We have that video if you want, but I'm not sure we need to do that.
The point
yeah, I
of this
saw
is
that. Yeah.
McLaughlin is not a member. He is a member of the public. He was elected, but until he's installed at the organizational meeting, he's not a member. This failed to register with these guys. They claimed they were members by dint of the election.
All right. Now,
did
this whole thing become went through an appeal process to your central,
Whoa.
No?
What happened? He stands up and says, point of order. Number one, he's got to be recognized. He's not a member. He didn't follow that. I expressly said in the beginning of the meeting, if you want to be heard, you have to raise your hand and be recognized by the chair. He didn't do that. He just jumps up, point of order, and other people start saying, get rid of Morgan, she has to leave, and who elected you? To me, oh, I'm elected chair. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, I didn't come here to get into an argument, a fight, or anything else, and I've had dealings with McLaughlin. Police have been called at 2 different meetings. Both of those were created by McLaughlin, calling the police, his actions. He assaulted me at one of those meetings, shoved me out of the way. And I just thought, I don't need this. I'm not going to put up with this kind of crap. I adjourned the meeting and left. I came there to have a peaceful meeting, to install the new officer, to install the new members, let them have their election and be done with it. And Morgan Kelly, who was a previous chair, had agreed to be my secretary, because we had no secretary, to record this so we'd have it for the minutes. We don't need this kind of aggravation from people that aren't even members yet, especially from one who has created nothing but problems over the past number of years. He'd been kicked off the committee for being an obstreperous person at the meeting.
All right.
And he jumps up and point of order. That's an aggressive behavior that I'm just not putting up with. I adjourned the meeting and left. And They apparently held their own meeting, which really violated the bylaws. The fact of the matter is they showed up with a whole new set of bylaws saying that we have new bylaws. Well, you can't. You don't have new bylaws, and bylaws are presented to the group, whatever group it is, 1 month and voted on the next month. Anyway, I adjourned the meeting and left. As far as I'm concerned, the meeting's over. It's done.
Well, so I had John with me just a couple of weeks ago giving his side of the story, and was there not an opportunity, or do you in fact take this to the the state Marin, California GOP and let them look at this and make a ruling on it?
I called a couple of people that are upper levels above me. I mean, I'm the bottom of the level, the central committees, and above that is a regional chair, and then a chair of chairs, and then there's what they call the proxies and credentials committee. And one of the things you get as a central committee are delegates to the state conventions. And delegates are, there's a bit of, I guess, power to some people. And we had 6 delegates. Well, because of the way that the meeting had progressed and the fact that they violated the bylaws of the whole operation, they didn't get the delegates. I got the delegates. And I appointed 6 delegates, myself as chair, and somebody that volunteered to be my treasurer. So we had the 6 delegates, which deprived John and Francis Droulard and their secretary and vice chair that opportunity to get the delegates. All they had to do was sit still. All they had to do was wait until the organizational meeting. Had McLaughlin not stood up and made a spectacle, which he does, and that's one of the reasons he was kicked off the committee, he and Droulard both. If they had just waited, they had the whole committee. They would have had everything. But they couldn't wait. He had to jump up and make a spectacle. The law states, and which is why I've stated at every meeting, there will be no recording, audio or visual, because the state law states at a private meeting, now if it's a public meeting, yeah, it's different, but this is not a public meeting. And I so state, and have for the past 4 years, that this is a private meeting. The public is allowed to attend and participate under certain specified circumstances, which is you must raise your hand to be recognized, and the chair has no obligation to recognize a member of the public.
Well, how about that issue, though? Is that the
What
way
issue?
all the, that point, that any central committee of a Republican Party meetings are private?
It depends on what the chair and the rest of the committee wants to do.
Right.
We have decided, the executive committee decided that we're a private meeting. Our attorneys advised us that that's what we have to say, which is why it's so very important that I said we are a private meeting.